Dave the Demon. For the past few weeks, I've had many of my socks go missing. I know, socks are easy to lose. You drop one while going laundry, and you never see it again. However, I live in an apartment building. It's hard to drop something when every pathway is so clean and clear. The laundry room is down the hall from mine, and sometimes I will lose multiple socks at a time. It doesn't make any sense. I threw my dirty socks next to my bed one night. I came home drunk and worn out, and I didn't have much time to think about anything, so I threw my socks, along with my shirt and pants, on the floor next to my bed. They were caked with mud. Not too hard to lose track of. When I woke up at around 3 p.m. the next day, one of my socks was gone. And so was my shirt. It annoyed me, because it was always one sock that went missing, never two. And plus, that was one of my only button-up shirts. Why'd it have to disappear? I grumbled, looking around my room to see if I could find the other dirty sock, or my shirt, or anything else that had strangely disappeared over the last few instances. Nothing. I was laying in my bed that night, when I heard a slight rustling noise coming from next to my bed. I dropped my phone on my blanket and looked at the ground. A flash of something, being pulled under the bed? I could barely tell what had happened, but I saw a flash of a small object, and the pitch-black shadow of something grabbing it. I fumbled around my nightstand drawer, until I found my trusty craft knife. It's small, but razor-sharp. Definitely a good defense weapon. I was hesitant to step foot on the ground, in fear of being pulled under the bed or something. But I did eventually, pointing my knife at the mounds of random items underneath my bed. Two eyes appeared in the darkness. I nearly shit myself, until my cat started walking toward me and purred. I laughed, scratching her on the head. A few days later, I came home drunk again. I had gotten into a verbal fight with one of my friends, and cried the whole way home. I felt like a bad person. I burst into my room, not bothering to turn on the light, and curled up into my blanket. I couldn't sleep. I felt like crap for the next hour or so. I felt a tap on my back. My cat had probably come to bother me again, kneading my blankets with her claws as if they were biscuits. I took my hand out of the blanket, and leaned over to pet her, but my hand touched something cold and clammy. I recoiled, unwrapping myself from the warmth of my comforter, to see what I'd just touched. It was a pitch-black hand, the top of a head slowly rising behind it. I yelped, jumping out of my bed and running into the bathroom, blanket still wrapped around me. I slammed the door behind me, breathing hard. A quiet voice called. "Are you all right?" It sounded so natural, it was weird. My confusion only grew. "Hello?" I asked the mysterious voice. "You've been crying for a while, do you want to talk about it?" The voice sounded so kind and welcoming. I still had an overwhelming sense of fear and confusion, but it made me nostalgic. It was the same way my mother had talked to me when she found me sitting in the rain, or laying on the porch step. I sat there for a moment, trying to decide what to do next. Trembling, I slowly opened the door. A humanoid-shaped figure was perched in front of me, except they also didn't look very human at all. Their eyes were hollow and dull, with two small white dots illuminating them. Their back and head was arched and furry, their limbs bent in unnatural directions, like a spider. It was something out of a horror movie. They were a monster. I don't know what caused me to open the door, but it was too late to go back inside the bathroom. I'd figured out the truth. I hesitated again, waiting for them to grip my skull and rip off my scalp, or whatever my terrified mind expected them to do. But nothing happened. I swallowed the lump in my throat, and still terrified, I replied. Yeah, actually, I would want to talk." They walked down the hallway without a sound, sprawled out on all fours. They moved in such an alien way, each limb drifting in a different direction as they made their way into my room, leaping up to my bed like an ant, and sitting down next to the backboard. I stood in the doorway, staring at them. They tapped on the bed with their long fingers, tendrils, and tilted their head to the side, motioning for me to sit down. Had someone spiked my drink? There's no way this wasn't some sort of a delirious hallucination. I sat down. "Life's tough, you know? Depression can be a really hard thing to conquer. And that's why you'll try to cope with alcohol and drugs or whatever, but there's always an end to being high. Sometimes you have to just think about the moment and what you can do moving forward, instead of dwelling on things you can't control." I'd just gotten a speech about life, from a terrifying extraterrestrial creature living under my bed. Definitely a hallucination, right? They looked at me for a moment, tilting their head, blinking, almost examining me. "You are a weird-looking creature," they said. I laughed. Which was weird, considering I'd been terrified a few minutes prior. I still was scared, I think. But I tried to ignore what they looked like and tried to listen to what they were saying. "Man, you look like you've seen a ghost. Is it my hair? Do I smell? I'm sorry, I don't have access to many materials." They rubbed their head, then stared at me again, almost waiting for something to happen. "Oh, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Dave." They put out their hand, and reluctantly I shook it. It was funny, I expected more of a name like Orgelorg or Babylon for a creature like them, but it was just Dave. I realized I had barely talked at all, and I tried to come up with something to say. Apparently I didn't need to. "You know, it's funny that we're just sitting here talking like this. Usually I'm only awake when you're asleep. I haven't even said a word to you until now, or you to me. I guess I never really thought to try either." They sighed. I tried to think of something to tell them, but I couldn't think of anything reasonable. I tried to pretend I was talking to an old friend. I feel that way with people sometimes, especially because if I talk to them, they don't always seem to want to return the favor, I said. "You know, speaking of which, I have to give you something," they said, crawling underneath my bed and pulling out some sort of object, handing it to me. It was a teddy bear, with a patchwork pattern sewn together with mangled string. A few pieces had spots of mud on them, and that was when I realized what the bear was made of. "I've been collecting those cloth things, I don't know what they're called. I figured you seemed sad lately, so I wanted to make you something." They had sewn a teddy bear out of my missing socks. I stared at it for a moment, admiring the different color patterns. They had actually done a pretty good job. I looked up at them, and they smiled. Crooked teeth stuck out of their lips, glistening in the moonlight. They were sharp, and there was a ton of them. I cringed, trying not to think about getting eaten by them. A foul stench emanated from their mouth, and I coughed a couple times before taking the teddy bear. They said nothing else, moving jaggedly back underneath my bed. I placed the teddy bear on my nightstand, and tried to fall asleep. Ironically, I slept well that night. Minus the hangover. I thought it had been a weird dream, until I noticed the teddy bear was still on my nightstand. I groaned, rolled over, and shut my eyes again. I realized something after I woke up for the day. I don't remember ever getting a cat. I guess I sort of assumed my neighbors had one that came into my room so much that I considered it mine, but nobody has a cat. I'd been petting something else the entire time.